Hi, I'm Jack Chelman, and welcome to the Impact Report, a program from NextGen Planners and the Global Returns Project. As you know, we focus on the intersection of financial planning and our planet. We cover sustainable investing, ESG, and beyond, and we have a particular interest in philanthropy. That's because charitable giving really matters for our planet, and because the research says it really matters to clients too. So, welcome to episode 7, where we're digging into what exactly charitable giving can deliver for mitigating climate change, reversing biodiversity loss, and generally protecting people and planet. Throughout the Impact Report, we've discussed the power of climate and nature giving to deliver impact that clients care about. To shed some more light on those successes, this episode is going to focus on 2 high-impact climate charities in particular, and their inspiring efforts to tackle the climate crisis and also the crisis of biodiversity loss. So, we're going to speak with 2 charities. As I mentioned, the first up for discussion is called Global Canopy. And our first guest to talk about it is Jolene Tan, Director of Strategic Communications. Hi, Jolene.
Hi, Jack.
Thanks for being with me. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. So let's start with the basics, because it's possible somehow that much of our audience might not know about Global Canopy yet. So I wonder how you would just introduce yourselves as an organization.
Sure. So Global Canopy is a data-driven not-for-profit that targets the market forces destroying nature. And we have a particular focus on halting and reversing deforestation worldwide. How we do that is we provide innovative open access data, metrics, and insights on deforestation and other nature-related impacts. We provide these to leading companies, financial institutions, governments, and campaigning organizations worldwide so that they can make better decisions about nature, forests, and people. And we promote transparency and accountability so as to motivate action.
Really fascinating. And Global Canopy is one of those organizations that is doing something you didn't even realize was so powerful. You wouldn't have even imagined it. And when it's described, it's just obvious that we need that data to find out how to do better. Jolene, I wonder, you mentioned sort of trying to tackle deforestation and reverse it. I wonder, in a little more depth, what are the problems that Global Canopy is trying to tackle?
Sure. So, of the overall framing of this is, of course, that it's about the nature and climate crisis, which I think your series is focused on. Twin crises, deeply connected to each other. As you know, when the climate is destabilized, that threatens nature. And at the same time, when we destroy nature, that worsens the climate crisis. So forests are key nexus for both these crises, because forests are, first of all, enormous carbon stores. And second, they're also huge centers of biodiversity. So what this means is that if humanity doesn't succeed in halting and reversing forest loss, we won't succeed on reaching net zero or in maintaining biodiversity in the world. So that in turn brings us to agriculture. So over 90% of deforestation in the tropics is driven by agricultural expansion for just a handful of globally traded commodities like beef, soy, palm oil, and timber. So last year, TRACE, which is the supply chain transparency program at Global Canopy, TRACE did research looking at just 5 commodities in 6 countries of production. And what we found is that the expansion of plantations and cattle pastures onto forests and peatland for these commodities emits more carbon each year than the whole German economy. So wow. Action on a handful of commodities in a few producing countries can have a huge positive impact. So that means that what the companies who are in the supply chains of these commodities do can have a powerful influence on how we resolve the nature and climate crises. And likewise, the banks and financial institutions that fund the companies in these supply chains have a key role to play. And that's where Global Canopy targets our energies. We seek to change how these businesses and financial institutions make decisions.
Wow. That's an amazing statistic around the the power of just that sort of commodity-driven deforestation, what its influence is. Jolene, what is Global Canopy's strategy for being successful in this work?
So if I had to distill it to just two things, I would say it's deep expertise, and that expertise has to be strategically applied. So a key insight at the heart of our work is that there's already enough data for companies, financial institutions, and governments to act now and act effectively. So deforestation is very much a solvable crisis. Companies and the investors who finance them, they don't have to wait for some kind of novel technological solution. They can use what's already there to triage where they're most exposed to deforestation in their supply chains and in their portfolios, and then they can take targeted action. And so we bring our deep expertise to develop data offerings and platforms that make this possible. And very crucially, we're not going it alone with this expertise, right? We build partnerships with other experts, with key stakeholders and standard setters, and we take pains to catalyze wider frameworks and make sure that our expertise is embedded in those frameworks. So for instance, Global Canopy is a founding partner of TNFD, the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. We're also on the steering group of the Accountability Framework Initiative, which defines best practice for companies operating with forest risk supply chains. And so one result of our work, and I'm not saying it's totally down to us, like collaborations are really key to this, but I think we've really made our impact felt here. One result is that within the nature space, deforestation has the most advanced data, metrics, and frameworks. And there is strong alignment among experts and among leaders in business and finance on what needs to be done. So those old excuses for inaction, that data isn't good enough, that supply chains are too complex, that people don't know where to begin, they really don't carry weight anymore. And you can see recognition of this, right? You can see importing markets moving to place deforestation-free requirements on supply chains. You've got the European Union Deforestation Regulation, which requires imports of commodities to the bloc to be deforestation-free. You've got the UK, the US in the process of putting in place not identical but similar legislation. And key buyers around the world are also converging on standards. Like you can see, for instance, China's state-linked trader COFCO recently made their first order of deforestation-free soy from Brazil. So Global Canopy very much aims to motivate the development of these standards and also to push for them to be ambitious, to be rigorous, to be data-informed, and to be practical.
Fantastic. And Jolene, you mentioned that the data is sort of out there for these institutions or governments to use. And partially that's because there's an amazing track record from Global Canopy. I know this year you celebrated a decade of deforestation data in the form of your 10th report called Forest 500 on deforestation and the drivers of it. Can you just tell me a little more about that report?
Certainly. So Forest 500 assesses the 500 most influential companies and financial institutions driving tropical deforestation. How do we assess them? We look at the policies and the commitments that they publish. We look at published policies because it's really critical for us that transparency is part of this piece. So these are commitments on deforestation, commitments on the conversion of other ecosystem. For instance, wooded savanna could be cleared for crops. And also commitments on related human rights, because deforestation is often linked to violations of human rights, particularly those of indigenous people. The lives of many indigenous people are intertwined with forests, and they often play a key role in the protection of forests. So that's an important part of the picture of action on deforestation. So we assess the strength of these commitments and the strengths of their disclosures and implementation. And I think in these 10 years, we've really brought new levels of transparency to the state of company action. And we've really highlighted the role of financial institutions as well in being able to play a key role in addressing this. One of our key findings after 10 years is that, unfortunately, voluntary action just isn't moving at the speed and the scale needed to tackle the problem. So we've really seen that there are some truly front-running companies that have really demonstrated how solvable this crisis is, and what it looks like to take good action. But the majority of key players are just persistently ignoring their role. So there are, some companies who have featured in every single one of these 10 annual assessments, and a quarter of those companies and financial institutions haven't published a single commitment on addressing deforestation. In fact, the majority of the financial institutions we look at also don't have a single publicly available deforestation policy. And nearly 2/3 of the companies that do set commitments aren't publishing adequate evidence of their implementation. So one of the things that I think our move towards transparency has really shown is the importance of regulation and of state action on this crisis as well.
Wow, a quarter have no deforestation policy. That's really shocking. Jolene, I know another really interesting part of Global Canopy's work is a tool called Encore, which continues to expand its reach and its scope. Can you just tell me a little bit about that tool as another example?
Sure. So the Encore knowledge base, it's a free and online and user-friendly tool that's aimed at helping organizations identify and evaluate their nature-related impacts and dependencies. So this goes beyond deforestation to other forms of nature-related impacts as well. And Encore, once again, is an example of Global Canopy working in partnership. It was developed by Global Canopy together with the UN Environmental Programme FI and also UN Environmental Programme WCMC. So these are two different UN sort of agencies. So this is a free and online tool, as I said. It helps organizations gain an initial high-level exposure to the nature-related dependencies and impacts they are exposed to through their business activities or their lending, underwriting, and investment in the economy. So just to give you an example to make that more concrete, let's say I'm a consultant and I advise clients on infrastructure projects. So I will know about what my clients' plans are, what their production processes are, and the sector that they work in. So with this information, I can go into Encore and Encore will highlight to me how their production processes depend on various ecosystem services, let's say water. So that might tell me that it makes sense to them not to operate in areas that are water stressed. And that sort of insight serves as a jumping off point. So then I use other sources of data like satellite information to get information on the location that the client is operating in. And I can get more detailed information to use for further assessments. So in terms of how widely it's used, Encore is one of our most widely used tools. It has more than 6,000 registered users. Around a third of those are financial institutions. And data from Encore is increasingly used at a national level by central banks and influential institutions throughout the world, including the Green Finance Institute, the Mexican Central Bank, and Banque de France.
Fantastic. And I guess my last question for you, Jolene, is what's something that Global Canopy is working on over the coming months that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked this question because just today, as we record this on the 26th of June, as part of London Climate Action Week, we are introducing the Deforestation-Free Transition Pathway, or DEFT pathway. And this is really a strong encapsulation of what I've said before about Global Canopy bringing both deep expertise and also building partnerships in the way that we work. So to sum up DEFT pathway, we're in a situation now where companies and financial institutions are increasingly looking at transition plans, right, for both climate and nature. They have acknowledged the need to act, and they're focusing now on setting concrete plans to address emissions with clear steps and time-bound steps. And so what DEFT pathway is it will launch in beta later this year. And today we are introducing it to the world as a collaboration between leading institutions and experts in this space. There's Global Canopy, the UN Climate Champions, Global Optimism, the Accountability Framework Initiative, Tropical Forest Alliance, Proforest, ZSL. Those are, all these experts are involved and in consultation with leading finance sector networks like Ceres, IIGCC, PRI, and the Finance Sector Deforestation Action Group. So, we've got this huge weight of, enthusiasm behind this collaboration. And what DEFT Pathway does is it's going to categorize companies according to their level of progress and highlight what are the priority actions they should be taking next and how those should be, those time-bound next actions. What do you ask a company to do next? And when do they have to do it by? And so it's really a synthesis of existing frameworks, existing guidance, and existing metrics so that we now have, very clear and actionable next steps that will help both companies and financial institutions to move forward on both climate and nature transition plans. And our hope is very much that, this will enable a more joined up exertion of pressure on the companies that have the most influence in this area and are the most at risk. And that DEF pathway will support a critical mass of financial institutions to collectively make clear asks on these companies and then drive change through that.
Wow. Well, thanks, Jolene. It's really, really interesting to learn more about Global Canopy's work. Clearly vital in this space and a great example of what a high impact charity can do that is a complement to all the other sort of sustainable goals that we as individuals or as clients might have. We're not done. We're going to have another really interesting dive into a fantastic charity. And that's via my next guest, who is the incredible Claire Brook, CEO of Blue Marine Foundation. Claire, before I say hello, I'm just going to give a little bit of your background because it's so relevant to our audience. So Claire joined Blue Marine as CFO in 2014 and then became CEO in March 2015. And if I'm right, Claire, prior to that, you were a pioneer of environmental investing, managing sustainable investment funds at Jupiter, NPI, and Henderson, and have been in this space for a huge long time. So really interested to speak with you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, and Aviva, I think it's important to mention.
And the list goes on. Absolutely. And that management 2008. So hugely interesting background in this space. I guess my first question, Claire, is what brought you over to the charity side after this incredibly successful career on environmental investing?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I guess it was because, first of all, having spent 24 years in the environmental, sustainable, and then, latterly impact investing sector, I kind of felt that we'd got a huge way and we'd achieved a huge amount in terms of raising the profile of ESG investing. But at the same time, I guess I felt that the combined crises of climate and biodiversity were just getting worse and worse and worse, kind of under the watch of people, old environmentalists like me. And I felt that just moving the dial wasn't sufficient anymore. And it was almost a question of kind of ripping off the dial and doing much bigger interventions. And the thing that really drew me to Blue Marine is that it's a very bold NGO, and the sort of impact that we've been able to achieve at Blue Marine is really huge. I mean, in terms of square kilometers, that putting 4.3 million square kilometers of ocean under protection and being able to go and see these places and experience how genuinely incredibly highly protected they are is really thrilling. So I guess, we're all experiencing climate anxiety, and if we're not paying attention. And so the only way that I can cope with it personally is to feel that I'm doing all that I possibly can to try and do something about that crisis.
Wow. Well, 4.3 million square kilometers is an amazing figure. And I know it will resonate with a lot of the people watching this because, human psychology is so funny. When I speak about climate and nature charities, one of the things that always gets people's attention and gets people engaged is talking about our oceans, because they do really speak to the things that we care about and we have a real connection to them. I wonder if you could, Claire, just sort of give an overview of what is Blue Marine Foundation trying to achieve, and more broadly, what's the importance of ocean conservation work?
Sure. Well, I was so interested listening to Jolene from Global Canopy, because in a way, what's going on in forests is similar to what's going on in the oceans, in that the ocean is one of our best climate ally. It's the world's largest carbon sink, even bigger than forests. And yet we're destroying it. So, it seems utter madness. So the imperative is to try and place as much of the ocean under protection as possible. So that's what Blue Marine is trying to do. We're aiming to see at least 30% of the ocean meaningfully protected by 2030. And the great news is that that's the whole world's aim now as well, since the Global Biodiversity Framework was established in Montreal in December 2022. 196 countries have signed up to protect at least 30% of land and sea by 2030 and to restore areas that have been really lost. So we feel that we're operating within a very ambitious framework, which is exciting.
Wow. I mean, that is ambitious. And I guess what is Blue Marine's strategy for being successful in that area? What do you feel is your particular area of expertise as an organization?
So we have a 4-pronged strategy, which is number 1, to try and press for protection. Number 2, to try and tackle unsustainable fishing and overexploitation of the ocean, which is, of all the threats to the ocean, it's being threatened by warming, acidification, all sorts of pollution. Plastic, of course, very high profile, but also things like noise pollution, on which subject I'm really sorry for the noise pollution around here, and also invasive species. But the biggest threat of them all is the mass extraction of life from the ocean, because by taking all the life out of the ocean, we're massively reducing its capacity to be our best climate ally, to absorb a huge amount of the CO2 that we produce, and to release around half the oxygen we breathe. So we are simultaneously working to place at least 30% of the ocean under protection and to tackle overfishing and overexploitation in the entire ocean. We also are keen to demonstrate that we're not just completely anti-fishing. There are lots of people all around the world who are reliant on fishing for their livelihoods, for their source of protein. So we work with genuinely low impact, sustainable models of fishing to show that fisheries and protection can kind of coexist in certain areas. And finally, we try and work on restoration projects to deliver models of restoration, because there are bits of the ocean that are so badly degraded that we need to kind of put back what is lost.
Absolutely. And I know you all have had some particularly exciting successes over the past, even in the past year. That's what's amazing about Blue Marine, is there's always something inspiring going on. What are some successes recently, Claire, that you're particularly inspired by?
Well, yes, it has been a very exciting year, because we've started to see countries committing to this 30 by 30 commitment. So the Dominican Republic, which is next to Haiti and has an extraordinary exclusive economic zone of ocean, both sort of above and below the Dominican Republic. And that government committed to protect 31% of its EEZ. And that's an area of exceptional biodiversity, with whales who both kind of travel there and breed there. So that was a thrilling announcement. And then hot on the heels of that, at the Our Oceans conference in Athens, the Greek government announced that they were protecting 32% of their waters, which kind of catapulted them to the head of the European Union in terms of protection, because the European Union in general has kind of lagged a bit in terms of marine protected areas. And Greece has amazing waters, as I'm sure lots of people know who've visited those waters, but they're horribly overexploited, empty of fish, kind of starting to fill up with pollution, plastic pollution, and so on. So we were very excited by these announcements. And then as part of our ongoing work with the Blue Belt in the UK, so that's the UK government having committed to protect its overseas territories, which are in some amazing places: Ascension, St. Helena, Tristan da Cunha, and just this year in South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, committing to highly protect, so fully protect a huge area, 166,000 square kilometers there. Very important, again, for migratory whales. So lots of kind of exciting achievements notching up all the time, and lots of reasons, I guess, to be assured that the world is starting to wake up to the need to protect our oceans and hit this 30 by 30 target.
Well, that's the amazing thing about following the work of charities like yours, Claire, is that it's a little, pinprick of light in a space that can feel very dark when you're just reading the negative headlines. So thanks for your work. I mean, I guess last question is, what are some of the things that Blue Marine is working on over the coming months, as I asked Jolene, that you think are worth mentioning here?
Wow. Well, we're doing a lot of work. We work on 57 projects in 31 different locations. So there's a lot going on, as it were. I mean, to pin it down to absolutely right now, today, right now I'm going to be very late for our monthly meeting of our units. Now, this is because Blue Marine is shaped like an octopus. So we have these 57 projects, which represents the sort of body head of the octopus. And then we have these 8 tentacles, which are trying to do different interventions, a bit like an octopus, where the tentacles come to sort of find ways of opening the jar or whatever. In any conservation situation, will use different tentacles to try and address the problem. And so these tentacles range from economics to carbon to education, media. But 2 of our tentacles that are really kind of working amazingly at the moment, that I'm very keen to hear how progress is being made right now, are legal and investigations. And the investigations team are looking at the way in which huge amounts of exploitation is happening, particularly in the Indian Ocean, in the hands of very few vessels, mostly EU, I'm afraid. And so we're working out how we can kind of raise awareness about this issue. Again, it's very much like forestry. You've got kind of very few companies who are responsible for a huge amount of the exploitation. I think it's kind of shedding light on that and cracking that open to make people aware how this fantastic resource that serves all of us is being despoiled in the interests of greed and profit for very few rather shady companies. And the other team that is doing amazing work right now is our legal team, where we're currently pursuing a legal case against the British government because the UK, in spite of having this wonderful record of protection in our overseas territories, has lagged a bit in the management of our domestic waters in the UK. And we are consistently issuing fishing quota way ahead of scientific advice, which means that we're just kind of running these stocks down. So we are taking the government to court over the fact that they are doing this and the fact that the process by which they do it is completely opaque. So, we're kind of breaking that open.
Wow. Well, huge amount going on, and love the octopus model as well. That's very on brand too. We'll let you hear all the exciting things that are happening and won't keep you any longer, Claire, but thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me. Bye, Jack.
So thanks, Claire, and thanks again to Jolene for both providing such a powerful window into the real solutions that can be delivered by climate and nature giving. Thanks, of course, to all of you for tuning in. And don't miss our next conversation, which is going to focus on what clients are actually trying to achieve when they ask about issues of sustainability. Finally, this program is co-hosted by the Global Returns Project. which is a UK charity helping financial advisors offer clients high-impact climate and nature philanthropy, often as a complement to sustainable investing. It's worth noting that if you found Global Canopy or Blue Marine Foundation inspiring today, you can offer Blue Marine and Global Canopy to your clients as a charitable option via the Global Returns Project. They're two of the 6 best-in-class climate charities that we select and assess through our team of scientists and our proprietary methodology. So if you'd like to learn more about how to work with the Global Returns Project at no cost to you or your clients, please do get in touch. My email is jack@globalreturnsproject.earth. Thank you.